I found a folder on his laptop called Stupid Wife, with my crying pics, mocking voice notes, and a spreadsheet ranking his affairs. So I sent it all to his family group chat with the caption, "Here's your golden boy's greatest hits." I swear I only opened his laptop to check the damn weather. It was raining so hard in Columbus that the street outside our apartment looked like a shallow river, and my phone was dead. That's all I wanted, just to know if it would clear up before my shift. But the second the screen lit up, that stupid blue folder caught my eye. Stupid Wife. At first I actually laughed because it sounded like one of those default meme folders he always saved junk in. But the moment I clicked it open, something cold went through me. Not fear, not anger, something emptier. Like the floor under me dropped an inch. There were screenshots. Dozens. All of them were of me, crying, mid-argument, confused, sometimes literally begging him to just talk to me like a normal human being. Moments I didn't even know he was recording. Moments I thought were private and raw and shameful, and apparently entertainment. Then I saw the voice notes. Him mocking my voice, mimicking the way I cry. I clicked one and heard him say, "This is the noise the stupid wife makes when she thinks she's right," followed by him doing that awful fake sobbing he used to do when he wanted to shut me up. I should have stopped, but I didn't. The spreadsheet was the final hit, a whole Excel file ranking the women he'd cheated with. Hotness, availability, emotional maintenance, cost. Then a column comparing how much he spent on them to how much he spent on our wedding. Next to my name he had written, "Worst investment of my life." My throat closed. I didn't cry, I didn't scream. I just sat there staring at it like it was someone else's life, not mine. And the messed up part. I still doubted myself for a second, like maybe I should overreact, maybe it wasn't as bad as it looked. That's what years with him did, made me second-guess even my own humiliation. But then he walked in. He looked at the open folder, then at me, and instead of panicking, he smirked. That same sideways smirk he used whenever he wanted to remind me he always had the upper hand. "At least you made it to the top 10 in something," he said. I didn't even recognize my own voice when I told him, "I'm done," he laughed. "No, you're not. You'll cry, you'll say you're leaving, and then you'll do what you always do, stay." Something snapped, quietly, almost peacefully. I picked up his phone, opened the family group chat, the one with his parents, siblings, aunts, cousins, and that one grandmother who always sent morning Bible verses. And I uploaded the entire Stupid Wife folder. Screenshots, voice notes, spreadsheet, every disgusting thing he thought he hid from me. He lunged for the phone, but I stepped back and hit send. The second it delivered, the chat lit up with typing bubbles from multiple relatives. His face went ghost white. And that's when he grabbed my arm and said something that made my stomach turn in a way I didn't understand yet, something that would make everything that came after so much worse. "You don't know what you've just started." I didn't, not then, but I was about to. I met him in 2017, back when I was still working night shifts at a diner off High Street in Columbus. He used to sit in my section, always ordering the same thing, black coffee and a turkey club, and always tipping too much, like he wanted me to notice. I was 23, tired, and honestly pretty lonely. So when he asked me out after 3 weeks of this slow-motion flirting, I said yes. Back then, he was charming in that confident, put-together way that made me feel safer than I should have. He worked in IT, had a steady job, had a car that didn't rattle when you drove over 40 mph. Compared to the men I'd dated before, he seemed like someone with his life figured out. Someone solid. Someone who meant what he said. The first 6 months were easy. He took me to small restaurants I'd never been able to afford, bought me little gifts just because, and made me feel like I was finally being taken care of. I didn't grow up with a lot of stability, so I clung to that feeling way too tightly. Looking back, there were signs. The tiny digs disguised as jokes. The way he'd get irritated if I didn't respond to a text fast enough. The way he'd make me feel dramatic whenever I tried to talk about something that hurt my feelings. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just twisted things subtly until I felt off balance. He proposed in 2019. On a rooftop restaurant at sunset, the whole cliché. I cried. He smiled. And later, when I talked about planning the wedding together, he said, You're better at that stuff than me, and basically checked out of the process. I assumed he was just busy. I didn't know his business trips were weekend getaways with other women. The first time I caught him texting someone sketchy, he turned it around on me so fast I questioned my own sanity. He said I was paranoid, insecure, micromanaging. I apologized to him. I apologized for finding messages he sent. That's the part that still makes me sick. After we got married, things got colder, not violent. Not explosive, just distant. He'd get annoyed when I cried, annoyed when I was quiet, annoyed when I wanted attention, annoyed when I gave him space. There was no right way to be around him. Any emotion I had was too much, too needy, or too dramatic. He stopped coming home some nights. Then he stopped giving explanations. Then he stopped pretending he cared that I noticed. But I stayed. Because I didn't know how to leave without feeling like I'd failed. I didn't understand until now that he was documenting everything, cataloging my breakdowns, turning my lowest moments into files he could laugh at. While I was trying to keep the marriage afloat, he was archiving my pain like it was content. It wasn't until that folder, until seeing those voice notes of him mocking me, that everything clicked. He didn't just cheat. He didn't just lie, he didn't even dislike me. He hated me, quietly, methodically, patiently. And I still don't know why, but I was about to find out. Because after I sent that folder to his entire family group chat, his relatives started calling. And not to talk to me. They wanted to talk to him. They wanted explanations. And they were about to reveal something I never saw coming, something that made the whole situation 10 times darker. The moment I sent the stupid wife folder to his family group chat, his phone started lighting up like a slot machine. Notifications stacked so fast the banner alerts lagged. His mother called first, then his sister. Then his aunt, the one who never spoke above a whisper but was suddenly blowing up his phone like it was on fire. He kept pacing the living room, muttering no, 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 under his breath. I'd never seen him look scared before. Annoyed, sure. Angry, plenty of times, but this was different. It was fear, real fear. And the part that confused me was that he wasn't scared of me, he was scared of them. He finally answered his mother's call. I could hear her through the speaker, even from across the room. Her voice sharp, furious, nothing like the sweet woman who used to pack leftovers for me during holidays. How long have you been doing this? He turned away from me, lowered his voice, and said, Mom, calm down, you don't know the whole story. She's exaggerating. She sent everything, she snapped. The recordings, the spreadsheet, the rankings. Are you insane? He hung up on her. Then he threw his phone onto the couch like it burned him and blocked the screen with his palm, breathing hard. When he finally looked up at me, the fear was gone. Something colder replaced it. You really don't understand what you've done, he said again, quieter this time. You've dragged my family into something they were never supposed to see. Maybe they should have, I shot back. Maybe they needed to know who you actually are. That's when he laughed, not the smug laugh from earlier. This one sounded unhinged, ugly. You think this is about cheating? He said. You think that's what they're mad about? I opened my mouth to respond, but before I could, his sister's name popped up on my own phone. I hesitated but answered. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't crying. She sounded scared. Can you leave the apartment? She asked me. Right now, please. My throat tightened. Why? Because if he's cornered like this, he gets mean. He gets desperate, and he lies when he's desperate. My parents believed him for years, and it cost us everything. Please just leave. What are you talking about? I asked. She went quiet, too quiet. Then she whispered, you should have been told what happened with his ex, before you married him. I thought he changed. My parents swore he changed, but the folder you sent, her voice cracked. It's the same pattern. My stomach flipped. What pattern? I whispered. My husband lunged toward me like he was about to grab the phone out of my hand, but I stepped back before he could reach me. His sister took a shuddering breath. He did this before. He documented things, recorded private moments, mocked her, manipulated her. And when she tried to leave, she broke off. Just get out of the apartment. I'm not saying he'll hurt you. I'm just saying he didn't handle it well last time. Last time what? I asked. But then someone started pounding on our door, violent, fast, relentless. He froze, then whispered they wouldn't. He looked genuinely afraid again. I didn't know if it was his family or someone else, but the truth was coming. And whatever it was, I knew it was worse than cheating, worse than the folder, worse than the spreadsheet. I hung up. He turned toward the door, and the pounding got louder. The pounding on the door didn't stop. It got harder, faster, like whoever was out there wasn't knocking, but trying to break it down. My husband backed away from it, which told me everything I needed to know. Whoever was on the other side, he wasn't expecting them, and he sure as hell didn't want to face them. I stepped toward the door because, honestly, I didn't think it was dangerous. I thought maybe it was his sister or his mom, ready to confront him face to face. But before I could reach the deadbolt, he grabbed my wrist, not hard enough to hurt, but hard enough to send a message. "Do not open that door," he said, voice low. I yanked my arm back. "Why, who is it?" He didn't answer. The pounding came again, followed by a man's voice, deep, furious, shaking with rage. "You coward, open the door." I froze. I didn't recognize the voice, but my husband did, his face drained of all color. "Please," he whispered, "stay back." That scared me more than the pounding. He only ever said please when he wanted to manipulate me. But this time, it wasn't a tactic. It sounded like a cracked edge of panic. The pounding stopped suddenly. I heard quick footsteps. Then the sound of metal sliding, like someone was digging through something on the floor outside. Then a click, then another. Before I understood what was happening, the deadbolt started to turn. From the outside, someone was picking the lock. My husband lunged toward the door, bracing his body against it. "Stop. Don't you dare come in here," a calm voice answered through the door. "Same man, no rage this time. You don't get to hide from this anymore." Then the lock popped open. My husband shoved his weight against the door, but the man pushed back. Harder. Stronger. The door cracked open an inch. I caught a glimpse of a face, mid-40s, dark hair, eyes that looked like they'd been burning for years. My husband shouted, "You have no evidence." None of that was true then, and it's not true now. The man pushed harder, teeth clenched. "She sent the folder to your family. Your own mother forwarded it to me. You think you're walking away clean this time?" I felt sick. "Who are you?" I asked. The man's eyes flicked toward me through the crack in the door, and for a moment he softened, only for a moment. "I'm her brother," he said. I didn't breathe. "Whose brother?" He looked at me like he already knew I didn't understand. The man braced his hand against the doorframe, pushing with controlled force as my husband kept trying to slam it shut. "My sister," he said slowly, "was the woman he dated before you." I felt everything inside me drop. "I didn't know he had a sister," I whispered. He shook his head. "No, he made sure you didn't." My husband shouted, voice cracking. "She was unstable. She lied. You know she lied." The man's jaw clenched so hard I thought his teeth might crack. "She killed herself," he said. The hallway went silent. You could hear the electricity humming in the walls. My husband stopped pushing on the door. He backed away from it like the words hit him physically. The man didn't lower his voice. "You recorded her too, mocked her, manipulated her, humiliated her. You shredded her sanity piece by piece and then told everyone she was dramatic when she tried to get out." I grabbed the wall behind me because my legs suddenly felt like they weren't attached correctly. My husband whispered, "You can't prove anything." The man's voice turned ice cold. "I have her journals, I have her texts, and now," he nodded toward me, "I have confirmation you're doing the exact same thing to your wife." My husband staggered back like he'd been punched. And then the man said the line that would haunt me for days. "And if you think I'm going to let another woman end up like my sister, you're even sicker than she said." The man, her brother, finally stopped pushing against the door. He let it hang open just a few inches, as if he didn't need to force anything anymore. My husband stood there trembling, trying to look composed but completely failing. I'd never seen that expression on him, not anger. Not arrogance, fear, real, gut-deep fear. Her brother stepped inside just far enough that my husband had to back up. He didn't look at me again. His eyes were locked on the man who used to date his sister. The silence in the room felt suffocating. I don't know how long we stood like that. No yelling, no insults, just a kind of charged stillness that made my skin crawl. Then my husband said, "You can't prove anything. And you can't be here, you need to leave." But his voice cracked on prove, and they both heard it. Her brother's lip curled, not in a smirk, but in pure disgust. "I'm not here for revenge," he said, voice steady. "I'm here to tell her," he nodded toward me, "that she's not crazy, that everything she feels is real, and that she needs to get away from you before you trap her the way you trapped my sister." My husband opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The man stepped back into the hallway. Before leaving, he looked at me, finally, directly. "He won't stop," he said quietly. "Not unless someone forces him to. Get out now while it's still your choice." Then he left. The door shut behind him with a soft click that sounded louder than a slam. My husband didn't speak. He just stared at the floor. And something about the way he did it, still, silent, calculating, scared me more than anything that had just happened. Because this wasn't the look of a man who was ashamed. It was the look of a man figuring out his next move. He finally whispered, "You don't get to ruin my life." "I just exposed what you did," I said. "You ruined your own life." He shook his head. "You think they'll believe you, they'll forget. They always forget. The next crisis will distract them. But you," he looked at me like I was a loose wire sparking in the corner. "You're the variable," that word, that right there. Variable, like I wasn't even a human being. I walked to the bedroom and shut the door. He didn't follow. He didn't apologize. He didn't try to talk. He just let me go like the conversation was over. But my mind was racing. And I wasn't staying another night under the same roof. I started grabbing the things that actually belonged to me: clothes, my documents, my grandmother's ring, the little shoebox of receipts and screenshots I'd been collecting over the last few months when I started getting suspicious. I didn't even realize until that moment how much evidence I'd already gathered. But leaving wasn't enough. Not anymore. Because if what her brother said was true, if my husband pushed another woman that far, then walking away silently wasn't just weak. It was dangerous. I didn't want to destroy him. I wanted to expose him, completely, publicly, permanently, in a way he couldn't twist into a lie or hide behind charm or manipulate into a misunderstanding. But to do that, I needed help. I needed allies. And I suddenly had one I never expected: the dead woman's family. Her brother texted me 15 minutes after he left, "If you're ready to take him down, I'll help. But you need to be honest with me. How much proof do you have?" I stared at the message for a long time, trembling, because the truth was I had a lot. More than he knew, more than my husband knew. More than even I realized until I started packing. And when I replied, my hands were shaking, but the answer was simple: everything. I have everything. What I didn't know, not yet, was that there was one piece of evidence I hadn't discovered. A piece he hid better than the stupid wife folder. A piece that would change the entire story, twist it into something far darker, and expose the real reason he targeted women like me and like her sister. That discovery was coming. And it would hit harder than all the others. I left that night. Not dramatically, not screaming, not slamming doors. I walked out while he was in the shower, calm, collected, numb. I drove to a cheap hotel off Morse Road and sat on the bed fully clothed, staring at the wall until the sun came up. Her brother, Evan, texted me again around 8, "Meet me at the Worthington Library. We need to talk somewhere neutral. Bring everything," so I did. I expected him to be intense, angry, shattered. But when I saw him sitting at that table in the corner, he wasn't any of those things. He looked tired. Like someone who'd spent years being dismissed, years trying to prove the truth, and years being told he was overreacting. I knew that feeling too well. We talked for an hour, maybe 2. He showed me copies of his sister's journals, and the similarities to my own experiences were eerie. Almost identical phrasing. The same patterns of manipulation. The same quiet, systematic tearing down of her confidence. But one entry stopped me cold. It wasn't about her feelings. It was about him. The entry said, "He keeps telling me I'm useful. I don't know what that means. I don't know why he says it when he thinks I'm asleep." My stomach knotted. Useful? He said that word to me once, maybe a year ago, when he thought I was half asleep on the couch. I'd forgotten. Or maybe I forced myself to forget it. I didn't want to think about what it meant. But the real twist didn't come until Evan looked at me and said, "I think your husband was keeping records for a reason, not just to humiliate you." That didn't make sense. Then why? Evan pushed a printout across the table. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. It was an email, one my husband had sent to someone named Foster Recruitment Liaison. The subject line said, "Documentation for character assessment." Then my eyes hit the body of the email. Attached are examples demonstrating that my wife is emotionally unstable, unpredictable, and not fit to be a primary caregiver. I will provide more recordings if needed. Primary caregiver. My throat tightened. "What is this?" I whispered. Evan hesitated. He didn't want a divorce, he wanted evidence for custody. I blinked. "I don't have kids," he nodded. "Not yet." The floor dropped out beneath me. Evan cleared his throat gently. "Did you two ever talk about starting a family?" I nodded slowly. "We said maybe next year. He wanted to wait until things were more stable." Evan looked at me with something like grief. "My sister didn't have kids with him either." But she thought she would. He had her convinced they were building a future. Meanwhile, he was collecting proof, anything he could use to discredit her if she tried to leave after she got pregnant. My pulse hammered. "He sent these recordings," I whispered. "These screenshots to prepare for a custody battle for a baby that didn't even exist yet." Evan nodded. "He did it to my sister too. She found some of the emails before she died." I covered my mouth, shaking. Useful, that's what he called me in the dark. Useful, not loved, not wanted. Useful for what he planned. For a child he wanted, not to care for but to leverage, to trap me permanently, to make me someone who couldn't escape him without losing everything. The stupid wife folder wasn't about humiliation, it was groundwork. A legal strategy, and before I could absorb that, Evan pulled out one more thing. A document, printed, highlighted, my husband's Google search history. Nested among the tech stuff and sports scores and porn was a recent search, 3 days old. "Ohio laws, can emotional instability void spousal rights?" And right below it, "How to have someone involuntarily committed in Franklin County." Ice slid down my back. "He was building a case," Evan said quietly. "To make you look unhinged, to get you committed long enough that he could file everything without your input." I felt sick. My husband didn't just hate me, he didn't just cheat, he didn't just mock, he was planning something far bigger. His sister wasn't an accident, and I wasn't supposed to escape either. This wasn't emotional abuse. This wasn't betrayal. This was premeditated entrapment. Calculated, cold, and the question was, why would he do this? It was, how far had he already gotten? Because when I checked my email later, I found something that made everything worse. A message from our insurance provider. "Your request to add psychological evaluation coverage has been approved." He filed it, behind my back. And I wasn't the one he planned to have evaluated. I didn't cry when I saw the insurance email. I didn't shake. I didn't panic. I just felt this cold, settling clarity, like every lie he ever told finally clicked into place and formed one solid, horrifying truth. He wasn't trying to hurt me because he was angry. He wasn't mocking me because he enjoyed it. He wasn't cheating because he was bored. He wasn't collecting recordings because he needed leverage just in case. No, he had a plan. And every tiny thing he'd done over the last 2 years, every jab, every manipulated argument, every moment he pushed me until I broke down, all of it was part of that plan. When I got back to the hotel, I opened the last folder I'd pulled from his laptop, the one I hadn't clicked yet because I was too afraid of what I'd find. It was titled, "Long-Term Planning." My hands were shaking as I opened it, but the files inside shook me harder. There were PDFs on Ohio custody laws, guardianship laws, documentation guidelines for spousal mental instability, and then a Word doc titled, "Projected Timeline." I clicked it. It opened to a bullet point list, months, steps, milestones, and one line highlighted in yellow, "Encourage conception by fall 2025. My vision blurred for a second. I thought I was going to pass out. I forced myself to keep reading. Below it, "Trigger separation slowly, increase emotional dysregulation incidents, record and archive." Next bullet, "Begin consultations with attorney." Focus. Full custody discredit spouse build narrative. Then, use spouse. Episodes to demonstrate instability. Leverage documentation. Episodes, that's what he called my panic attacks. The ones he pushed me into, the ones he recorded. But the last bullet point was the one that hollowed me out. If spouse attempts to leave prematurely, accelerate psychological documentation and initiate involuntary evaluation. Must maintain control. Control. That word felt like ice water on my spine. I read it again, and again, because this wasn't a custody plan. This wasn't even about kids. It was about possession. He didn't want a wife. He wanted something he could own without question. Something legally tied to him. Someone whose credibility he had already destroyed before she even realized she needed to defend herself. And when I confronted him, when I stood there in the doorway of our apartment after sneaking back for the last of my things, he didn't deny a single word of it. He didn't even look ashamed. He just sighed, leaned against the kitchen counter and said, "You were supposed to settle down, that's all. You were supposed to stop fighting me on everything. I gave you stability, a home, plans, a future. All you had to do was be consistent." "Consistent," I whispered. He shrugged. "Predictable, containable, containable." I felt something in me break cleanly, silently. "What about your ex?" I asked. "What did you do to her?" He didn't answer for a moment. Then he looked down like the question bored him. "She couldn't handle responsibilities," he said. "She got emotional, irrational. She made everything harder than it had to be." "She killed herself," I said. He didn't flinch. "She failed," he said flatly. "She couldn't keep it together. She wasn't built for long-term partnership." I stared at him, and for the first time in our entire relationship I saw him clearly, not as a husband or a cheater or a manipulator, but as something hollow, someone who viewed emotion as weakness, someone who viewed women as assets, someone who didn't break people accidentally. He broke them because he believed that's what they were for. Then he added, "And you almost worked. You were so close. But then you pulled this stunt with my family, and now you've forced my hand. You can't just walk away when we're this far into the process." The process. That's when I understood the truth that chilled me to the bone. He genuinely believed I belonged to him. Not emotionally, not romantically, legally, structurally, strategically. Leaving wasn't just disobedience, it was sabotage. That's why he didn't panic at getting caught cheating. He didn't care if I hated him. He didn't care if I lost love for him. He only cared that I stayed, because he needed me for the next phase of his plan. A plan his ex didn't survive. And a plan I was now determined to destroy completely, publicly, and with evidence sharp enough to cut him out of my life permanently. I walked out of that apartment for the last time. But the revenge, that hadn't even started yet. I didn't go back to the hotel after I left the apartment for the last time. I drove straight to Evan's house. He lived in a small place in Westerville, quiet street, old trees, a porch light that flickered every few seconds. When he opened the door, he didn't ask questions. He just stepped aside and said, "Come in." I sat at his kitchen table and laid everything out, my screenshots, his sister's journals, the emails I'd found, the projected timeline, the recorded call from his mother, the insurance approval message. He stared at the pile for a long time. Then he said, "We're going to bury him, the right way." "The legal way?" I nodded, but I wasn't fully convinced. I kept expecting someone to tell me I was being dramatic, overreacting, reading too much into things. But Evan didn't say any of that. He said, "He did this to my sister. And he almost did it to you. No one else is going through this cycle again." The first step was going to the police, not to file charges, but to file a statement. A time-stamped record that documented his coercive control, the recordings without consent, the plan to have me committed, the custody preparations, the mental health insurance additions. Evan came with me. The detective took it seriously. More seriously than I expected. The next step was a lawyer. Evan had a connection, someone his family used during their own nightmare years earlier. She met with us the same day. I told her everything. I showed her everything. She didn't blink once. When I finished, she said, "Good, you got out early. He got sloppy, that's our leverage." She helped me file for a protective order within 24 hours. When he got served with it, he blew up my phone with 27 missed calls in 15 minutes. Then emails. then texts, all of which I forwarded straight to the lawyer. His family was already tearing into him. His mother called me crying. His sister sent flowers to my hotel room. That night, his aunt messaged me a long, shaky apology saying, "We believed him because it was easier than believing the truth about him. Thank you for forcing us to see it." But none of that was the revenge. Not yet. The actual revenge came when my lawyer filed a formal complaint with his employer, complete with the recordings, the spreadsheets, the mockery, the emails to foster recruitment liaison. HR scheduled an urgent review. By noon the next day, his work laptop was seized. By 3 p.m., he was suspended. By 6 p.m., he was locked out of every system. He tried to blame me, obviously, but then the police showed up at his job asking questions. Not to arrest him, yet but to follow up on the statement I filed. His coworkers watched it happen. His boss saw, HR saw, everyone saw. Humiliation isn't revenge, loss of power is. But the final hit, the one that ended everything, came from someplace he didn't expect. His family. I didn't send them anything after that first group chat leak. I didn't need to. They invited me to their house. And they told me the truth. He had been doing this since he was a teenager, manipulating girls, documenting them, playing with their emotions, controlling them, avoiding consequences because he was too smart or too charming or too good at seeming normal. But now there was a pattern. Now there was documentation. Now there were two victims, one living, one dead. His family didn't protect him this time. They cut him off completely. And when his mother offered to help me pay my legal fees, I cried, not because I needed the money, but because someone finally believed me on the first try. When everything was in place, lawyer, police report, HR investigation, protective order, my lawyer told me the last thing to do was send him one single text. A legally approved closure message. It said, "Everything you built was based on lies. Everything I lost, I'm getting back, and everything you planned, it's over." He replied with one sentence, "You'll regret this." I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because 2 weeks later he was fired. 3 weeks later, HR forwarded their findings to the police. A month later, he was under investigation for coercive control and unlawful surveillance. And 6 weeks after I left, he was calling his own mother asking for a place to stay. She told him no, he had planned to use me, he had planned to own me, he had planned to break me. But in the end, he destroyed only one life. His, and the kicker, the last line of his projected timeline. I printed it out and taped it to the inside of my journal. A reminder of the man who thought he could control me, maintain absolute authority. Funny, because now he has none, not even over himself.